So why did I leave California for Krakow, Poland? Let's talk about it. To a lot of people, Poland seems like a very random country, but I assure you there are a lot of very good reasons why I chose to live here. I don't think it's any secret that California is on the decline, especially after COVID. It's picked up quite a bit with their leniency on crime. People don't feel safe walking around anymore, to the increasing homelessness problem and an increasing cost of living, which, to be honest, I don't think is worth it. California does seem to have a lot of issues, and when I talk to people who live there, the biggest reason that they stay is either because they grew up there or people will talk about the weather. There are so many places in the world that have great weather, so I don't think that justifies paying an extremely high price to live there. And to me, it just didn't make sense, because after all of my travels and seeing how quality of life can be better in so many other places in the world, it just makes me wonder, why am I paying first world prices for a third world way of living? If I want to live in a first world country, I expect it to come with certain levels of safety, certain levels of privileges, maybe healthcare, maybe public transport. All of these basic things I really feel California lacks. It's so interesting when I talk to my friends here and they all talk about California, because it gets super hyped because of the movies and everything, and everybody wants to go to Los Angeles. But it's a different story when you're from there, and seeing the decline of the city actually really makes me sad. So I think it's easy to just sit here and bash California all day long, and sure, I've done my share of that in previous videos. I still have a fondness for California. It's where I grew up. Yes, the weather is amazing. Yes, there's a lot of opportunity there. Yes, it's one of the most diverse populations you've ever seen, and it's amazing being able to visit the mountain and the beach in the same day. So there are a lot of really amazing things about California, but I think with the mismanagement of policies, and obviously with me not agreeing with all of the politics of California, because I lean more conservative, even though some of my social policies are a little more on the liberal side, I've just seen California run to the ground. And when I was in Los Angeles in California, I always knew that that culture and that place was just not for me. I always felt like an outsider in terms of how everybody acted, the politics, even with my own family, to be honest, with what I value and how I want to live my life. It feels like I'm not appreciated or valued there just because I see the world so differently. So the main reason why I left California is because I feel like the quality of life that you're receiving for the cost that you are paying is not worth it at all. Let's start with something basic like safety. I cannot confidently say that I feel safe walking around in many places in Los Angeles. There is a huge homelessness and drug problem, and so many businesses are leaving LA because so many people are just going in, shoplifting, whatever they want, and if it's under $1,000, they cannot be criminally prosecuted. So it gives no incentive for people to act correct when there's no real consequences. And it seems like this weird paradox where things are getting more expensive. I and many people can see that the cities are not improving at all. So I'm just thinking, like, where's our tax money going? Something that I really value living in a place like Poland now is that quality of life is extremely high and it's extremely safe here. In Latin America, it's not that safe, but you're gonna be paying significantly less prices. So it kind of makes up for the safety issue. But it doesn't make sense to me paying US prices living in a US country and having to worry about your safety. And to be honest, I feel safer in poorer countries such as Ukraine and Vietnam. I mean, Ukraine has the war going on, but the general social fabric and fear of being robbed or someone doing drugs on the street or someone attacking you is not that high. Something that I've realized is I like living in a country where guns are illegal. I think the US has this really weird obsession with our guns, and it makes sense because it's just baked into the culture. There's a reason why school shootings are the biggest in the US compared to so many other countries around the world combined. And sure, we can have the argument that it's a mental health issue, whatever, but honestly, after living in a society where guns are illegal, I quite prefer it that way because I generally do feel safer. And this feeling of safety is something that you cannot buy. I also think that when you live in a society where guns are legal, it gives people this weird God complex, because I think how society is supposed to function is that if there are certain lines that you cannot cross with people because things will get violent, and if a guy is bigger than you or can kick your butt, then you know how to hold your tongue. But I think in America, because all of us can wield guns regardless of our physical strength or capabilities, it gives us the misconception that we can take on people that are bigger than us, or that we can maybe cross lines that the low threat of violence will not allow us to cross. My general quality of life is just better in other countries, right? And when I say that, I don't mean being able to buy the most expensive clothes or cars, but just like a basic style of life, being able to pay rent, being able to go out and have drinks with my friends, eat at restaurants, not have to cook all my meals, groceries. The base level of what I have to pay here in Krakow is around $1,200 to $1,300 a month. And this includes my rent, being able to buy all my groceries, being able to go out with my friends, and live a very comfortable life. How many cities in California can you honestly say you can do that in? If you guys want to contact me for whatever reason, feel free to reach out here. I do offer consultations if you guys are looking to move to Poland or Latin America or Southeast Asia, anywhere in the world. Another issue that I have with the US in general is the food culture is kind of ridiculous. There's a bunch of reasons why Americans are obese, coming from the overall sedentary lifestyle of not having to walk everywhere, which is a big problem in California because there's no good public transportation, so you need a car to survive. That means that you're not going to be walking around as much. That means you have extra costs that you have to worry about, such as the cost of your car insurance, gas, which easily can be another $500 to $1,000 a month, and the food being extremely processed and super expensive for honestly what I feel is less quality food. Something that I've learned living in Colombia or Asia, or even here in Poland, the cost of food should not be that high, and for the quality that we're getting, because everything in the US is extremely processed, high sugar, high fat, the nutritional value is not that high. Even the fast food in the US and California is getting ridiculous right now. One trip to McDonald's will cost you $12 to $15. Once you get used to the cost of living and how much groceries actually cost in these other places around the world where the food is fresher, the eggs are better, everything is just better. To me, I'll go there and I'll pay $25 to $30 for a meal, and I'll just think to myself, I don't think this is worth it at all. And on top of that, tipping culture is quite ridiculous now because I think you have to pay 15 to 20% on everything. So you get the base cost of the meal plus tax plus tip, which is essentially like almost 30% more than the price that you're actually paying. And I'm just like, that I don't feel like that it's our responsibility as a consumer to pay the wages of these waiters who are not getting paid correctly by the companies, you know, and that just goes into a bigger issue of minimum wage and stuff that I don't want to talk about. Something that I really love about living in Europe is just the access to public transportation. This is something that a lot of US cities don't have, but particularly California and where I'm from, Los Angeles, it is not existent essentially. You need a car to get anywhere in that city. And I like how many places in Europe, you don't need a car to survive. You can get around here in Krakow specifically with just a bike or public transportation or being able to walk everywhere. And I love living in cities like that because it allows you to walk a lot more, which also contributes to not being obese and living a more active lifestyle, but also just not having to worry about where to park your car, not having all those extra costs that come with owning a car, because I can just hop on the tram, go anywhere I need to in the city. And at night, if I'm going out with my friends and we're getting drinks and stuff, if I get super drunk, I don't have to worry about driving back. I can just order a Bolt or take public transportation, and it's very easy to get home. And just overall in general here in Europe, it's quite easy to even get to the other European countries, right? In the US, you have to take flights to get to all the other states, but in Europe, there are so many options available. You can go by train, you can go by bus, you can rent a car and drive everywhere too. And just the ease of transport here in Europe is fantastic. I also really like the work-life balance that a lot of European countries have, and here in Poland is no different. You know, I think in the US and California, because everything is so expensive, especially Los Angeles, there's a very strong hustle culture. Everybody's just trying to survive. So you pretty much live to work and you don't have a lot of free time. You don't have a lot of vacation. Polish people work extremely hard. You know, they're actually quite well known for that. They also know that it's important to spend time with your friends and spend time with your family. Family values are very strong here, something that I feel like is definitely lacking in the US in general, but also in a very liberal place like California. And it's nice being able to live in a society where people don't care about your job and what you do. In Los Angeles and San Francisco, your job title and where you went to school matters a lot. Here, people don't care about it. If you're a good person, if you're chill, if you're fun to hang out with, that's all that you really need. And I really appreciate that. I also really love the architecture and parks in Europe. And here in Krakow, Poland, there are so many beautiful things to see. You can walk by the river next to the castle. That's a beautiful view. Krakow has a lot of very beautiful parks that you can walk through, and there's a lot of history behind it. They really know how to take care of their nature here. I know growing up in Los Angeles, it's very much a concrete jungle. Yes, there are some beautiful historical sites that you need to drive very far to even see. And there are some parks all around the city, but they are like American style parks, which feel really like fake. And I love how like in Colombia or here in Poland, the parks are kind of made around nature. They take huge pride in taking care of their nature and having a lot of nature spots everywhere. I just didn't really feel like that in California. I feel like in California, in order to go to a nice nature spot, you had to travel very far to get there. And then I like here, if I wanted to go to the lake, it's a 20-minute boat ride, or you can even walk there or take public transportation to get there. There's a nice balance of nature and city in Krakow, which is why I like it compared to some of the other Polish cities. I also just feel like all of my tax money is going to waste, right? Like if you look at a place like Spain, where the taxes are quite high, but for what you get in return, you get a good healthcare system, ambulances you don't have to pay for, you get really good public transportation, it's very safe, they maintain the public infrastructure and architecture really well. And I'm like, okay, if I'm paying these high taxes, I feel like I'm getting something from it, right? But in California, it feels like the taxes and the cost of everything just keeps on going up, but your overall quality of life is going down. How does that make any sense? I also just generally don't agree with the overall politics of California. I do lean more right and conservative, and I think there's just a lot of corruption going on in the government in California. And there's this one 600-meter railway that they spent $11 billion on, and I don't know how much money the California has spent on trying to solve this homelessness problem, which only seems to be getting worse. And yes, I could go to maybe a place like Texas or some of the more conservative parts of the US, but after living in Europe, I'm quite comfortable here and I really like the European lifestyle. There's also a big difference in the way that people treat Asians in other places around the world. I would say that in Western Europe, Asians maybe don't have the best reputation, but I'm happy to say that here in Poland, Asians are seen very positively. I think in the US, and a lot of Asians can back me up on this, we have a lot of negative stereotypes that have been thrust upon us, from being submissive, passive, nerdy, dorky, very socially awkward. We have all those negative stereotypes that have been placed on us through Hollywood. Whereas in other places in the world, we don't have any of those stereotypes, so it's more of an equal playing field. And here in Poland, Asians have a stereotype for being hardworking, for being responsible, for not causing any issues, which is why we have a better, status as immigrants compared to some of the other countries. And it's nice being seen as like an attractive race, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say that we're fetishized here. Polish girls are quite open to dating Asian guys, and that's something that I really appreciate. In California, especially Los Angeles, if you're not 6 feet and white, I feel like it's very hard to date there. Plus, there's also the income standard as well. Someone made a comment on one of my videos that, I don't like dating in the US because I'm not in the top 10% and I can't compete. That's probably true, but I also don't think it makes sense that I have to compete harder for women that are of a lesser quality. Because once you've traveled the world and seen women in other countries, you realize actually, yes, passport bros do have a point, and dating is much better in other countries. In California specifically, because the cost of living is so high, you have to deal with all of the unrealistic expectations that a lot of American women have in terms of height, in terms of physical attraction, in terms of personality, all these things, and have a high income to back it up. The biggest issue that I have with American women is really the attitude. If you guys have traveled, you guys can back me up on this. Women in other countries are just more feminine. When you tell them to stay in shape, they don't get offended by that. California is notorious for having this really bad body positivity movement. And it's crazy because it feels like so many people that I went to high school and college with, all of them are obese now. I look at all the pictures and I'm just like, what the heck happened? Because I've lived in other countries and my tolerance for obesity is a lot lower now, because you don't just see that in the general population. And here in Poland, the Slavic women in general take care of themselves. They're very fit here. They're very beautiful. They know how to respect men. And I'm not gonna sit here and say the whole, they're submissive to their man, because that's definitely not true, because Polish women are quite strong. I think there's just more of a general respect for men, and they don't blame everything on the patriarchy like a lot of women in more liberal cities in the US do. And I think Los Angeles and San Francisco are just liberal hubs, so a lot of women have been infected with this whole woke feminist mindset. And feminism in California is a lot different than feminism in other places, because I am a feminist in the terms of yes, I believe women should be treated in equal value to men, but we do very different things. And I think in California, the women want all of the privileges that come with being a man without all the responsibilities of it. They still want to be treated like women. I just don't want to have to fight to get that mind virus out of them. Also in California, I find that the women tend to be a lot more promiscuous, just because the general culture promotes this openness in sexual liberation. And I think that's quite disgusting. I'm not a huge fan of that at all. There's a huge prevalence of hookup culture in California. Maybe you can say this all over the US, because this is a very rampant thing pushed in media and through our music and in even university culture. And it's quite common to find women 18 years old that have a body count of 5, 8, 20 years old, body count of 10. That's crazy to me. Here in Poland, they are a lot more relationship oriented, and their body counts are just generally not that high. It's very common to meet women who have only been with a couple of guys and they've been in super long-term relationships with them. Yes, they are open sexually as well, but in the context of a relationship. It's not like they're sleeping around with a bunch of people. And it does feel like it's very hard to find a relationship there, because especially Los Angeles, right? Like LA is kind of the hub of people trying to social climb. Your status and everything that you've done and the people that you know is super important, rather than who you are as a person. That's obviously an overarching generalization, but there's a very big difference in how women treat you in other places around the world for being a man. The overall viewpoint of a relationship, what a man's job in the household is very different in other places around the world. Here in Poland, the women definitely have a lot more realistic expectations. They don't need you to make a ton of money. They just want you to treat them well if you guys get along personality-wise. And they are generally a lot more attractive than Californian women at all. I'm just being completely honest. I love how Poland is a developing country. The GDP has increased a lot in the last few years. It's expanding its military, so Poland is becoming one of the next superpowers in Europe as well. And it's really exciting to see Poland's growth. I am in alignment with a lot of their policies. They are a lot more conservative. They have strong anti-immigration policies, which is amazing because a lot of Western European countries are suffering because of unregulated immigration that they've let into their country. And just overall, I see a lot of potential in Poland. So that's why I love living here. Krakow to me is the best city in Poland. If you're thinking about leaving California, you should consider living in other countries. Poland, specifically Krakow, is one of the best places to do it. Leave the video a like if you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.